This is Real Talk, the Customer Insights Show with Jenn Vogel. Join Jenn and her guests for this live discussion around topics that will help you understand your customers better. Also available on podcast channels. This live stream is presented to you by Voxpopme, the leader in video research. Here's today's live conversation.
Hello, insights professionals, marketers, and everyone who wants to understand your customers better. I'm Jenn Vogel, and today I want to talk about how to use online panels in your qual and quant research studies. Really excited to dive into that topic today by one of my colleagues here at Voxpopme, our data scientist and community manager, Matthew Handegaard. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Jenn.
Really excited to have you on. So just for all of our listeners out there, Matt's been with the company for about 4 minutes, and we could not wait to bring him on the show today. So thank you for being a good sport and coming on so quickly.
Yeah, I'm excited to get my feet wet here.
Absolutely. So, I mean, and when I say 4 minutes, obviously I'm exaggerating, but maybe to get started, tell us a little bit about your career and how you got here, your role at Voxpopme, and how you're getting started to make it a success.
Great. Yeah, so I'm Matthew Handegaard. I've worked in the online panels and data collection space for about 10 years, more than 10 years. And I have quite a bit of experience with different types of methodologies and different types of panels. And while every online panel is unique and different, there are some core tenets to each that are exactly the same. So I have experience with classical opt-in surveys where people take written surveys. You know, they can be the long surveys, they can be quick surveys, and I've also got experience with passive measurement, where a panelist or a community member is more interested in sharing their online behaviors as opposed to written surveys. So another type of data collection, another type of panel. Also ad effectiveness, where people are interested in kind of exposing who they've seen on advertising. And also TV measurement, where people are more interested in showing us who they watch, what they watch, which programs they're watching. And now here I am at Voxpopme, and the online panel that we have here is the influence community. And we're doing qualitative video research. So this is a new challenge for me, and I'm really excited that it's a new spin on panels and on data collection. And
Awesome.
Here.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you here. So, I mean, just in that little intro, you kind of touched on so many different types of online communities, panels, things like that like we never really dig that much into on this show. One in particular, the idea of passive measurement is something we don't really talk about all that often, though we have talked about, behavioral research and things like that. Could you go into a little more detail of like why somebody would be using passive measurement and how that works in a sort of panel setting?
Yep, passive measurement, I really see this as an emerging technology in market research as well as research in general. It's kind of trying to answer that question of how can we generalize data that we didn't necessarily collect through a survey tool or a methodological device that we designed for that purpose. So passive data collection and passive measurement is showing us not the attitudes and opinions of consumers, for example, of community members or panelists. It's showing us what they're actually looking at. So it's their behavioral research as opposed to their attitudinal research.
Yeah, there's a huge need for that. It's been a topic that's come up quite a bit on the show, just about sometimes people don't know what they do or don't know how to communicate what they do effectively. So it's important to get that attitudinal, that opinion-based research alongside the behavioral research to get a complete picture.
Right. And it's just kind of like enlightening our understanding of the world. The more ways we can look at a problem, the more ways we can ask a question, which I think the asking of the question is a unique asset that we have. We can pose it to a human, and they can give us their actual response in speaking. They can show us their face, and we're able to connect what they're saying with how they're saying it. And as humans, we have the tools to actually decode what the influence community members or the Voxpopme respondents are saying in a more
Yeah.
deep way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now you've been with us for about a month or
Mhm.
longer. Is that
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Um,
about a month.
so tell me, what's your focus for these initial, few months at the company?
Well, I think it's important to give panelists, to give the community members a voice. And when I say give them a voice, we focus a lot on the client, and it's very important to focus on the client. It's always number one. But as my role, as I see it, is I'm focusing on the respondent. I'm making sure that our research subjects have the tools that they need to provide our clients with the answers to the questions that they're asking. So as I come into the company, as I get to know the influence community, I look at three pieces, and the first piece that I feel I need to look at are the community members. And then the second piece I'm looking at is the client. And finally, what is us as Voxpopme employees? What are we doing to support the influence community? And how is that playing into the needs of the client? And how can we really kind of glue that stuff together from
Mhm.
the responses into the product that we're giving to our clients?
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. It's great to have that focus. The community is a great asset to our business and to our clients, and so it's great to have you focusing on their voice and making sure that they're getting what they need, so that we have a strong community. I love it. Um,
Absolutely.
so anybody who listens to the show regularly knows we love a good definition here on Real Talk. So can you give us an overview? Like, how would you define online panels?
Yeah, online panels, in the most basic form, it's a group of people who want to share their experiences or want to share insight or information with people who are in decisions, people who are in positions to make decisions that affect services, policy, or anything really that they're interested in. So we try to find the right people for the right research. Not every single
Mhm,
individual is going to be able to provide responses to every single question. So it's important that we're finding the right people and we're finding the right match to the client's needs. Um, so when we talk about online panels, you can call it an online panel in some spaces. More the qualitative spaces, they'll say this is an online panel. Here at VoxPopMe, with our influence community, we're calling it more of a community because it's a smaller group of people who provide deeper insights and answer questions about things that matter to them, and they actually have their voices heard, literally, and they have their faces seen.
mhm,
So I'm saying online panels, online communities, both of these are interchangeable depending on the kind of research you're doing. But at the end of the day, it's a group of people who are ready to participate in the activity that the clients are looking for.
mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, you say that panel and community are sort of interchangeable. I mean, are there differences? And, should there be? Should we be kind of defining those two things differently?
Slightly differently, but like
Mhm.
I said, casually, they're interchangeable, whatever kind of fits the sentence that you're putting together.
Yeah.
So when I think of an online panel, I'm thinking large panel, very large, much larger panel than a community. So when we talk about online panels, you're really getting a deeper dive into the population. So you can find subpopulations from an online panel. You can find specific demographics that you may not otherwise be able to find through a community.
Mhm.
So when we're looking at panel, we're looking at more of uh, a qualitative based or centric type of research, and when we're looking at community, we're looking at a more qualitative type of situation. So, for example, here at Voxpopme, we have a community and we have panel partners. So
Mhm.
when we combine these two things together, we can get both deep insights as well as we can see further into a population by partnering. So I want to talk about that a little bit more. Our influence community, we are aiming to provide our clients with a good breadth and a good uh, different faces, and we want to be able to give them what they need when we're looking at a larger population, when we're looking for insights, and when we need to go out further to, let's say, a younger age group where we're looking just for a few slices of years, or for mothers with young children is another, you know, example. Um, we will combine our capabilities with the capabilities of our panel partners to really provide that um, the deeper look into what our clients are needing.
Yeah, amazing. I think that's very common practice across the industry is,
For sure.
even with those larger panel companies, there's always a limitation to, who you can reach. And to your point before, you said it's important to find the right people for the right research. And I love that. And the the narrower you go with your targeting, it's harder to find those people all in one place.
Absolutely. And just an idea of what we're looking at on representation from our population, even when you combine all of the online panels together, you may still have a base of 1 to 2% of the actual population that you're looking for. So when you start to whittle down a number, and this is really important for researchers who have specific consumers, we need to be sure that we're realistic about the the population and the number that we're looking for in responses. I think it's always possible to find people who are the right people for the research. Sometimes the question is, how many can we find?
Mhm.
And with our type of research here, with qualitative video responses, we're not usually looking for a sample size of n equals 1,000.
Mhm.
We're maybe looking for dozens or 100, because you can really get a lot of deep insight out of just a few of our responses when we're talking about short videos, answers to questions that clients have. And I think that's where we're really strong, is that we can we can find the people and we can provide enough people to answer the questions and the types of questions that are being asked through the types of research that the clients are coming to us at Voxpopme for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the sample size based on the type of research that you're doing. Because a lot of those quant studies are 1,000, 5,000 people, or any behavioral research. If you're able to scrape that data, you can pull in, really high volumes. Whereas, an in-person focus group is going to have 12 people in it. And
Right.
so we kind of
So,
sit somewhere in the middle, 100 people providing video or something like that,
exactly.
300 people. It's not quant numbers, but it's not as quite as limited as some of the traditional qual. So it's a nice in between.
Yep. I mean, we have global reach. We can have focus group like products and offers to our clients where we don't have to be location based,
Right.
and we can kind of go above and beyond the s- single question to an audience. We can ask multiple questions to our respondents. We can follow up with them later, and we don't have to get them back to that location. It's a lot like what we're doing here right now with work these days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is a shift to remote work. There's a shift to remote qualitative research, and
Yeah,
I think we're part of that shift, and that's exciting for me, as a recent joiner of Voxpopme.
absolutely. Yeah, we're all excited about that for sure. It's definitely been accelerated in the last couple of years. Um, so In your experience, what makes a good online panel? And, as we talked about, there's so many out there and different types. How does a company choose the right one to work with for a specific objective?
Yeah, yeah. As far as choosing the right online panel, I think the first thing is that the respondents need to have chosen us as well. We need to put ourselves out there to show people what we have to offer, uh, and then people will come to us. Respondents will find us, and they will say, "I like participating in video responses. I'm I'm video ready, and here we are. We have a good base of panelists who are all ready for the task that we have for them, and that's really what I think what our strength is that we have this base, this core of a community who is ready at a moment's notice. They have
Mhm.
an app installed on their phone or tablet, and they're ready for opportunities, and the
Mhm.
types of opportunities that we're offering them as our primary kind of objective with serving our client is they're ready for the question. They want to provide the answer. um,
Mhm.
a lot of people like giving responses to question. They like their voices heard, and that's important. And not every respondent has the same voice. I think a lot of members of our community, and then when we compare them to members of online panels or other communities, they find that they're more comfortable doing X, Y, or Z. Ours are more comfortable with videos when we're talking about like these other large panel companies that sometimes we go out to for a deeper depth into a population. They are more comfortable with written surveys
Mhm.
because that's kind of what they've chosen, that's what they've found, and that's what they like to do. Now, there is a lot of crossover. People who like to provide opinions in different ways. And then finally, as we touched upon earlier, uh, there's that behavioral research that's really an emerging field right now, where people are looking to just, show their online activity to companies, like they're willing to allow us to observe their behaviors as opposed to participate in the type of research that we do here or that other survey companies do. So finding the right panel, it's about finding the right respondents for the type of research that we're doing.
Mhm.
And in our case, we're doing video research. We're asking people to provide their opinions, their attitudes, their thoughts to us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned this earlier also, and that people are sort of opting in to participate in these different types of, whether it's quant or video or passive or whatever. What does it mean to opt in?
Yeah. So opting in, you hear this from online research companies a lot, is the concept of double opt-in or
Mhm.
opt-in. I think it's the relationship that we as researchers form with the research subjects. It's about having a mutual agreement and mutual respect between the company who is facilitating the research, uh, the client, and then on the other hand, the respondents or our community members. So opting in it's kind of in a broader way, the concept of opting in is all agreeing to the same terms. So they agree that they're happy doing this. We agree that we're thankful for the participation of our community members, and we we're both together trying to bring something to our client that the client doesn't know. The client is curious about these questions that they have, and we're bringing that insight to them together, opted
Mhm.
in one
Yeah.
another.
I love your description of that, being sort of mutual respect, because I would tend to think of, like, I'm opting in to provide my feedback. I'm agreeing to participate,
Yeah,
and I'm not actually thinking of what the company is agreeing to for me.
mhm,
So I just love that description of, we're agreeing to the same terms, and not just that I, as a research participant, am signing away my life and my
right.
rights, right?
It's voluntary. We're looking for voluntary, compensated participation is
Mhm.
really what we're about here.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I mean, tying that in, this idea of mutual respect, I just love how you described that. Like, how does that help to kind of create space for empathy with research participants? That's a topic we've been talking about quite a bit certainly over the last couple of years. And I think a lot of people were like, why haven't we been talking about empathy all along? But where is the sort of the space for empathy when it comes to online panels?
Right. So the mutual respect is important here. It's a give and take relationship between the respondent and eventually the client. So I think we're all in that together. When we talk about empathy, first I kind of want to go through like the idea of honesty. Like we are honest with the respondents about what they're getting and what we expect from them. And then likewise, the client is honest with our respondents about the question that they're asking. So it's this whole kind of web of mutual respect and honesty that can show us truth. And then in that truth, we get to observe empathy. And here's where I think we have a unique position in the market where you can get insights and you can get responses through classical survey research. You can get information and data through the behavioral passive measurement type of research. But one thing you can't get from any of that research is empathy. And when you see someone's face, the face is communicating more pieces of information than any amount of text that you could ever compile.
Hmm.
And then really, it's, we do have some technologies to say, well, what is the emotion of this respondent saying? But more powerful than that are our clients' brains and their ability to interpret what people's faces are saying to them while they give their testimony through the Influence app and through the
Mhm.
Voxpopme platform.
Mhm. That's one of the things I love about the video responses is it is a reminder that there's a real human being on the other side of that research. Because as you mentioned, there's not a ton of empathy in the charts and graphs that we might get from
Right.
other methods of data collection. And, you know, I won't say that we don't have empathy when we run that kind of research, but you do have to sort of force yourself to remember that there's real people, and they're not just respondents or participants or whatever. They're real live people. And the video is just such a great reminder of that. Kind of, you can't ignore it in the same way where you could if it were just charts and graphs alone.
Yeah, and I think it also gives the research, it provides a level of validation and verification where you actually see a person. Does this person line up with the things that this person is saying? Um, I, I I don't think the technology is far enough for a respondent to be able to, pretend to be a person. They're right in front of the camera now. They're giving us all of the responses. And I think clients can see that. I can see that through the responses from the community. It's a lot harder to tell a fib over a camera than it is pressing radial buttons on a survey.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot more authentic, and I do find that a lot of the responses quite, you know, um yeah, authentic is the word. You
Yeah,
know, you really hear people's stories in a different way. Um all right, so I kind of took us down a road, and I want to back up a little bit. I had another question for you as you were talking about opt-in.
yeah.
How do we recruit participants for our community? How do we keep them engaged so that others out there who are thinking about their own panel recruitment
Mhm.
can kind of hear some of the tips and tricks?
Yeah, so we have like a qualitative panel here, right? We have a
Mhm.
community, really. And when you think about qualitative research, there are methodologies, recruitment methodologies that are kind of the norm for that type of recruitment. So for a focus group, you'll do snowball sampling, you'll do phone calls to find some people, you'll grab people on a mall intercept even, and we kind of look at those types of methodologies and we tailor them for our needs. So if we think about, okay, we're looking for video responses, we're not going to go run and grab people who aren't doing video. We're going to look through a video medium. So
Mhm.
there, social media is out there. We do our recruitment organically. So I think it's mostly through two methods. One is we put out ourselves on the internet so that people can find us. This is kind of that mutual opting in, finding one another piece. So we make ourselves the opportunity that we provide. We make that known. We compensate you. We compensate well for the investment of time that respondents put in. So
Mhm.
people are finding us. And then also another big means is through referrals. Referrals like snowball sampling, it gives us the types of people that we need more organically. So friends and family members of people who find this type of research interesting are much more likely to participate than if we were doing recruitment in a more classical style through advertising online only or
Mhm.
through paid programs. So organic recruitment, I think it kind of mirrors some of the methodologies that we deal
Sure.
with in classical qualitative research as well.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love the organic growth of the community and the sort of word of mouth recruitment style, which does yield a very engaged community. You've mentioned a couple of times this idea of compensation, right? Like we're
Hmm.
compensating people for their participation. Um, there's a wide range of how to compensate people for participation in research from, you know, nothing for maybe an NPS
Right.
survey if
Yeah.
you're a customer of a particular brand, all the way to some uh, very high incentives. What's your position on compensating for research?
So for our influence community, and we do partner with other panels and communities that have their own incentive program, and for the
Mhm.
most part, you allow uh, the kind of the owners of the panel or the community to provide rewards in their native currency. For us, what we
Yeah.
do is we have a cash payment system. So we feel that we provide enough of an award amount, an incentive amount to give people cash. We don't need to turn it into points. We don't need to run sweepstakes or any kind of marketing type of reward program. We're compensating people for their responses. And when we compare our compensation to really any other type of research, for example, like survey research, online survey
Mhm.
research, we're giving many times more for participating in that research. And we're asking for just a fraction of the participation. So while you'll see surveys out there that are written surveys and radio buttons and all the grid questions that are 40, 50 minutes long, we're giving our community members the same compensation for just about a minute of content, a minute of video
Mhm.
content. And we feel that we're probably getting that same value from our respondents in that 1 minute time frame as you may get through a long survey where you're compiling data and you're looking to do data analysis from the results. So the kind of the time commitment, we pay our respondents really well, and in return, all we ask is that they give us quality insight and are honest and provide us with
Mhm.
usable responses.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. I think it's important to make sure that the incentive matches what you're asking people to do. You know, obviously people, although there's so many ranges of compensation that's like appropriate and probably not
Absolutely.
enough. And, but I do think it's an important note to kind of make sure that whatever incentives are being put out there are mirroring what the effort or the value that you're getting out of the response.
And that kind of the trust between the respondent and us, like I want to establish with a respondent, with a community member, that we're compensating for time. We're not paying you professionally for your
Mm-hmm.
services. We're compensating you for your answer, for your question, and for
Mm-hmm.
being available when we need you.
Yeah.
I think just kind of setting the stage on expectations, being clear about the incentive structure and the payment structure is important, because that's really, I mean, that's kind of the value proposition that any panelist, any member of any community is going to think of when they first start
Mm-hmm.
responding to a question. So if you're not upfront and if you're not clear about that at the beginning of a question or of a program, then your responses are going to reflect that type of chaos. But when you bring order to it, they will give you a more orderly response.
Yeah. I think that's an important distinction, but that you're, making it clear. We're not paying you professionally. We're paying you for your time and for the value of your response. I love that.
Yeah.
So I guess how do you think about asking good questions in online panels? Obviously, we've talked about all different kinds of panels out there, but how do we think about asking good questions?
Important to any research plan is like starting the maze from the end. First, you need to
Mm.
establish what you're trying to accomplish, and then you work your way backwards to, formulating the question that you're going to ask the respondent. When I think of quant, I think it's important to include an analysis plan, and that analysis plan should dictate the questions that you have and how many questions you have, what data points you're trying to collect. When you're thinking about qualitative research, I think it's important to consider what questions you're trying to evoke by asking the questions. So, really, when I think about qualitative research, I'm trying to get more questions to my questions. I want to answer some
Mm.
questions on the way, but ultimately, I want to be left with more questions about more specific details than I started the interview process with. And then I want to use those questions that I came up with through this exploration, through this qualitative type of research, to go and dive deeper. Now, you can dive deeper by asking questions again to the same people who answered your first questions. You can take those questions to a different group of people. Or another way to enrich any data or any research is to go at a different angle. So use those questions, those more granular yes no type questions. Is it this way or is it that way, to create a quantitative study. So I see a lot
Mhm.
of the work we do here with quant or qualitative research as it makes a researcher's job easier to write a survey after you've done qualitative research. So that's really where I like to take the question back. What are the broad questions that you have that will lead to more specific questions? And you want
Mhm.
the broad question to be singular. It's important not to go. It's important when you're asking a question not to ask more than one question at a time to a person, because you really need that focus of the response
Mhm.
to give a meaningful response. And really, our brains, they're kind of wired to end at a question mark. So when we have a short sentence with a question mark at the end, that's we keep repeating that question in our brain until we have a good answer, and then we provide the response to that question. So as
Mm.
far as good quant or good qual questions go, good questions for Voxpopme work, uh, they should be they should be broad, they should be singular, and it should lead to more questions.
I think you just hit on something so genius. As I spend a lot of time talking to our customers or other insights professionals in the industry, and everyone's thinking about like how to be more iterative, how to be more complete in their research. And what you just shared is like I said, I think you've touched on something genius where you're running your quant work, the qual can then be used to understand the motivation or the why behind what you've learned in quant, and then help you to design that next quant study, because that research is never ending, and understanding like what questions are coming up that we didn't know we had to ask in the quant.
Right.
Right. I didn't know that was a question that I needed to ask, that consumers were struggling with or had an opinion on, but it's come out of this broader qual that now I can narrow in on it in my next quant study, and then repeat, like use that qual again to get to that root cause of what I've learned in the quant and help to design my next quant study. I think it just it does create a really complete way of kind of understanding the communities that we serve.
And for a researcher, let's make it easy on ourselves. Let's let the questionnaires write themselves.
Mm.
Spend the time on the big questions that we're trying to understand. Get those questions out of there into the universe and into the respondent's mind, and they will give back the guidance to
Mm.
come up with that further research. And the end of any good research is a call for more research. I mean, every good research paper ends with, well, here's what I didn't cover, here's the
Right.
questions that still need answering. And that's really, what's kind of what guides learning and further understanding and enlightenment, is
Mm-hmm.
that process of asking more questions even after you've done your work.
Yeah. And that's a really like I love how you framed that as the goal. Like the goal should be to discover that next question. Because I think oftentimes we are trying to answer the first question. The goal is the first question we have, right? But
Hmm.
thinking about what are the additional questions that I don't understand, that I need to dig deeper into, I think is really exciting, and just kind of creates more opportunity to drive value in the business. We've discovered something new here, a question we haven't been asking, because we talk a lot about people are changing all the time. Well,
Absolutely.
there's probably stuff that we're not asking them that they're dying to tell us about. And so that's exciting.
I agree.
Amazing. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. This was a great conversation. A lot of really good nuggets came out of this today. So thrilled to have you on the team, and thank you. I so appreciate you coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jen.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for listening. We will be back for another episode next week, and I look forward to seeing you then.